Miami's streets glimmered under the orange haze of street lamps, but the Foster house on Northwest 14th Street remained quiet. Behind its walls, children carried stories too heavy for their age. Some hid their pain in silence, others in anger. Diego sat by the cracked window of his shared room, listening to the hum of cars passing by. At 16, he had already learned that trust was dangerous. Every promise he had ever heard had been broken. Every goodbye had left scars. The Foster house was not a home, at least not for him. The peeling paint on the walls, the flickering light in the corridor, the worn bunk beds, all of it felt temporary, like a waiting room for lives that would never truly begin. Yet there were moments when the silence was broken by laughter. Sophia's laughter, to be exact. She was a year younger than Diego, and though she carried her own shadows, she always found a way to bring warmth into the house. She shared sweets with the younger kids, told stories on stormy nights, and offered comfort without asking anything in return. Diego, however, kept his distance. He did not want kindness, not from her, not from anyone. But as the summer heat pressed against Miami's walls and the nights grew restless, Diego could not escape the storm building inside him. And soon, he would discover that Sophia's presence was not something he could avoid. The summer nights in Miami carried a weight of their own. Humidity clung to the skin, and the air pulsed with a distant thrum of music spilling from cars cruising down Biscayne Boulevard. For the children of the Foster house, the streets were both a temptation and a threat. Diego had been warned many times not to wander after dark. Yet on that particular night, the anger boiling inside him demanded an outlet. He slipped through the back door, lanterns of the city guiding him into alleys he knew too well. He was not alone. A group of older boys leaned against a wall near the basketball court. They were not strangers to trouble. Their voices were sharp, their laughter edged with danger. Diego walked closer, his chest tight. He wanted to belong, if only for a moment, even if it meant burning himself in their fire. One of the boys handed him a bottle. Another gestured toward a fight breaking out at the corner of the street. Diego's fists clenched. His anger begged to be released. But before he could act, a soft but urgent voice called his name. Diego. He turned. Sophia stood at the edge of the court, her eyes wide, her breath heavy from running. She should not have followed him, yet she had. The older boys noticed her. Their laughter shifted, mocking now, sharp as broken glass. One of them stepped forward, blocking Sophia's path. She did not flinch. Her gaze never left Diego. "You don't need this," she told him, her voice low but steady. Diego's pride screamed against her words. He hated being exposed, hated being dragged into the light when he wanted to sink into the dark. Yet her presence unsettled him in ways the boys never could. "Go back," he muttered, jaw tight. But Sophia shook her head. She stepped closer, ignoring the boys who circled like predators. "You are not like them. And if you stay here, you will lose yourself." The boys jeered. One pushed her shoulder. Anger flared in Diego's chest, different from before. Not the blind rage he carried, but a protective fire. He stepped between her and the others. For the first time, his fists were not for himself, but for someone else. Tension cracked in the air. The boys closed in, their voices louder, daring Diego to make a move. His pulse hammered in his ears. He glanced at Sophia. Her hand reached for his, subtle but firm. "Run," she whispered. Before he could argue, she pulled him. The two broke through the circle, their footsteps slamming against the pavement as shouts erupted behind them. Bottles shattered against the ground. Someone gave chase. They sprinted down the narrow streets of Miami, past graffiti-stained walls and flickering neon signs. The humid night pressed against their lungs, every breath sharp. Diego's grip on her hand tightened, as if letting go would mean losing more than just the race. At last, they ducked into an alley behind a closed bakery. The smell of stale bread and sugar lingered in the air. Both collapsed against the wall, chests heaving. Sophia's eyes met his. There was no fear in them, only determination. "I told you," she said softly. "You are not like them." Diego could not answer. His breath carried only silence. The following days in the foster house were different. Diego found himself searching for Sophia's voice, her laughter, her calm presence. He hated to admit it, but the bond she had forced upon him that night grew roots he could not tear out. They began sharing secrets in whispers after lights out. Sophia spoke of the mother she barely remembered, of the promises never kept. Diego revealed his anger was not just rage, but grief he never knew how to name. In the dim glow of the hallway lamp, they discovered a strange truth. Pain was easier to carry when someone else held a corner of it. But bonds, Diego knew, came at a cost. And as the summer deepened, so did the dangers beyond the foster house walls. One evening, as the children gathered for dinner, a sharp knock rattled the door. The foster carer answered, her voice tense. Diego glanced at Sophia. A chill crawled up his spine. Through the window, he saw them. The same boys from the court. Their faces were masked in shadows, but Diego recognized the stance, the defiance. They had not forgotten. That night, whispers filled the foster house. Some children cried, others hid under blankets. Diego sat awake, fists clenched, the weight of choice pressing on him. He could confront them, or he could let Sophia's warning guide him away. But he knew one thing. Danger had followed them home. The boys waited outside the next day, leaning against the fence like vultures. They taunted Diego by name, daring him to come out. His anger flared, but Sophia stepped in front of him. "You cannot fight fire with fire," she said. But the taunts grew sharper. One of them mentioned her. Diego's vision blurred with fury. He pushed past her and stormed outside. The street became an arena. Children pressed against the windows of the foster house, watching. The boys circled him again, just as they had at the court. Diego lifted his fists. But before the fight could begin, Sophia ran forward, placing herself between him and them. Her voice shook, yet it carried across the street. "If you want him, you'll have to go through me." Silence fell. Even the boys hesitated. The leader of the group laughed, but unease flickered in his eyes. Sophia did not move. Her bravery unsettled them more than any fight could. Diego's chest burned. He had never asked her to stand for him, yet here she was, risking herself against shadows he had chosen to chase. One of the boys shoved her, harder this time. She fell to the ground, scraping her hands. Rage exploded inside Diego. He lunged forward, swinging with all the fury he had buried for years. The fight was brutal, quick, chaotic. Fists met flesh. Shouts filled the street. Sophia cried out for him to stop, but Diego's anger drowned her voice. When it was over, the boys scattered, leaving behind the echo of their threats. Diego stood trembling, his knuckles bloodied, his breath ragged. Sophia rose to her feet, her eyes filled not with fear, but with sorrow. "You nearly became one of them," she whispered. That night, silence wrapped the foster house. Diego sat alone, staring at his bruised hands. The children avoided him, their eyes wide with something close to fear. Only Sophia entered the room. She sat beside him, her scraped palms resting in her lap. "You cannot let anger own you," she said quietly. "If you do, you will never escape it." Diego wanted to argue, but his voice cracked. "It is all I have." Sophia shook her head. "No. You have me. You have us." Her words struck deeper than any blow he had taken. For the first time, Diego allowed the tears he had buried for years to fall. Sophia did not turn away. She sat with him through the storm, her presence steady as the rain that began to fall outside. The days that followed were quieter. The boys did not return. Perhaps fear kept them away, or perhaps they realized that the foster children were not as alone as they seemed. Diego and Sophia's bond grew unspoken, but unbreakable. They shared chores, stories, and laughter that once seemed impossible. For Diego, the foster house no longer felt like a waiting room. It became something closer to a home. One evening, as the Miami sun sank into the horizon, Diego stood on the porch. Sophia joined him, her hand brushing against his. Neither spoke. They did not need to. In the silence, Diego realized the truth he had resisted for so long. Family was not only blood. Sometimes it was the person who ran into the dark to pull you out. Sometimes it was the voice that stayed when all others walked away. The foster house behind them buzzed with life, the laughter of children filling the air. And for the first time, Diego felt the weight of his anger lift, replaced by something he had never thought possible: belonging.